the Probate Juvenile Division, which is being hosted by our organization and the City of Athens government channel. We hope that this will provide you with information for the upcoming election. The candidates are Ken Ryan and Zach Saunders. We appreciate these candidates for making the time to participate. Please be sure that you have a voting plan for this fall's election. Register to vote or update your registration by October 5th. If you want to vote by mail, you must submit a written absentee ballot request form as soon as possible. Absentee ballots will be mailed to voters starting on October 6th. Early in-person voting occurs from October 6th through November 2nd, and Election Day is Tuesday, November 3rd. The League has one additional candidate forum planned this fall. It is a forum for the Athens County Commissioner race with the candidates Charlie Adkins and Bill Hayes. That forum will occur on Tuesday, September 29th at 7:00 p.m. and can be viewed through the same channels as tonight's forum. In addition to candidate forums, our league publishes a voter guide in which candidates provide written answers to questions. Our voter guide is available online at www.vote411.org. We are currently in the process of uploading local candidate and issue information. A printed condensed version of the guide will be available in late September in the Athens Messenger and at local libraries. The League is dedicated to expanding public awareness about government issues and encouraging active participation in government. The League does not support or oppose political parties or candidates. Despite our name, the League is not for women only, and we welcome participation and support from all people. Please visit us online to learn more about the League and to become a member. One more item before we begin. Please respond to the census. You can do this online or by phone. Having an accurate count ensures that our communities continue to receive our share of resources and representation. The deadline to respond is September 30th. Now I turn this event over to Tanya Conrath, our moderator for the evening, who will explain the procedures.
Thanks, Adrienne. Good evening and welcome to the Candidates Forum. I'm going to start by explaining the forum procedures, which each candidate has agreed to in advance. Tonight's forum will include opening statements from each candidate, a question from each of the media representatives present. We want to thank the Athens Messenger for joining us tonight, questions from the public, and closing statements from the candidates. Each candidate will have 3 minutes for an opening statement, 2 minutes for a closing statement, and 1 minute and 30 seconds to answer each question. There will be no rebuttals. The order for answering questions will rotate, and I will indicate who speaks first. The candidates can also see our timekeeper for tonight, and she will indicate when the speaker has 30 seconds remaining, 10 seconds remaining, and when their time has expired. If a candidate continues speaking, I will say thank you and move on to the next speaker. All questions from the public were received ahead of time through the email address included in our advertising and were then reviewed by a league panel. The panel removed any questions that, 1, could not be answered by both candidates, 2, were statements rather than questions, 3, were duplicates of other questions, or 4, those that judicial candidates are prohibited from answering under Rule 4.1A7 of the Ohio Code of Judicial Conduct. This rule states that judicial candidates shall not, in connection with cases, controversies, or issues that are likely to come before their court, they cannot make pledges, promises, or commitments that are inconsistent with the impartial performance of their duties of judicial office. You may hear our candidates mention that they can't answer a question tonight, and most likely that will be the reason. I will ask as many questions as time allows, but also making sure we end at 8:30 tonight. And finally, though personally a difficult topic to talk about, I want to acknowledge the recent passing of beloved Judge Robert Bob Stewart. Judge Stewart was in his 18th and final year as the Athens County Probate and Juvenile Court Judge. He would have handed the baton to one of our candidates tonight. Judge Stewart treated those that entered his court with dignity and humanity. He was held in the highest esteem within the legal community and with the Athens community. In 2015, in fact, our League of Women Voters honored him with the Wiseman Award. It was for recognition of his deep commitment to the welfare of the children of Athens County. Our hearts go out to his wife, Michelle, his daughters, Riley and Rachel, and his family and many, many friends who will miss him dearly. It's worth noting that both of our candidates tonight had a professional relationship with Judge Stewart and are mourning his passing as well. Okay, I'm going to bang my gavel and call the forum to order. The order in which our candidates will speak has already been determined. We will begin with an opening statement from Ken Ryan. Ken, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters and welcome my opponent and everyone who's participating tonight. I'm extremely honored to be a candidate for probate and juvenile judge, and the honor, of course, is bittersweet in light of the loss of Judge Stewart. It was my privilege to know Judge Stewart and to practice in front of him. Over the past 13 years, I've had more than 1,000 cases in probate and juvenile court alone, most of which was in his courtroom. Judge Stewart's influence on my practice, my understanding as a lawyer, cannot be overestimated. I first came to Athens County in 1992, and since that time, I've served our community in many ways. I've been a teacher, public official, an attorney for children, the elderly, and people suffering from mental illness in both probate and juvenile court. During my 12-year teaching career at Trimble Local Schools, I had more than 11,000 hours of classroom experience. I taught hundreds of children ages 10 to 18. In juvenile court alone, I've represented more than 100 children in abuse, neglect, dependency, and delinquency cases. I also represented many clients in private custody cases. I've interacted with foster parents, caseworkers, child psychologists, psychiatrists, guardian ad litem, school officials, community control officers, and countless other providers. In probate court, I've been the attorney for the parents in adoption of 61 children. Probate court also administers guardianships for adults who can't take care of themselves. I've personally been the guardian for 17 such adults who have a broad range of impairment, some who reside in a nursing home, some in assisted living, and some living independently with care teams that I created to support them. I've navigated the Medicaid system several times and represented dozens of clients who also work as guardians. I'm the trustee of the Special Needs Trust and represent clients who do the same. I'm one of 2 attorneys in Athens County appointed in the probate court to represent patients at the Appalachian Behavioral Health Care Facility, which is our local mental health hospital, in commitment and both medication proceedings that occur there. Over the past 10 years, I've had more than 600 cases on the mental health docket. I've practiced in 18 counties across Ohio, including Franklin and Hamilton counties, and most of Southeast Ohio. After 28 years of service, I've developed a comprehensive level of experience and understanding that I believe makes me uniquely qualified for this particular position. I have no interest in any other judicial office because I know that's not where my talents lie. I'm grateful for the experience and humbled by the support of so many family, friends, and colleagues. I want nothing more than to offer my gifts and service to Athens County. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Zach Saunders, your opening statement, please. 3 minutes.
Thank you. And first, I'd like to thank the Athens County League of Women Voters for putting on this first ever virtual forum. Everything that you guys have done through this pandemic it continues to amaze me. Second, I do want to wish my condolences to the Stewart family. Judge Stewart was a staple in this community. He was a fantastic judge, really a pillar, but he was a good human and even a better family man. He was a judge that I will strive to be. I'm running for this position because that's where my heart is. I currently live in the Plains with my wife, Meg, and my 2 children, Lane and Emery. In my extended contested primary, I knocked on over 2,000 doors and walked over 150 miles meeting Athens County residents. I think that shows my work ethic and determination, and I'll take that to the bench. I can't do that during this current pandemic, but I've been reaching out to community organizations and have received several endorsements, including the Athens County Democratic Party, the Trimble Dover York Democrat Club, AFSCME, the Southeast Ohio Central Labor Council, the Area Labor Federation of the AFL-CIO, the Ohio Association of Public School Employees, and the National Association of Social Workers. I got my start in Licking in Fairfield County as a criminal defense attorney, where I represented thousands of individuals, including juveniles. At that time, I was representing individuals that were accused of traffic violations all the way to being accused of murder. I was in guardian ad litem and also represented families, including parents and children, in abuse, neglect, dependency cases. I then moved on to Malika Gall Sloan Ancillary in Athens, which to me is one of the better law firms in Athens County, where I was truly mentored by some great individuals that I still call true friends and supporters. There I expanded my practice into probate, juvenile court, custody work, domestic relations, criminal practice, and also general litigation. In 2015, I came aboard to the Athens County Prosecutor's Office because I consider myself a true public servant. At that time, until this day, I'm in charge of our civil division, where I represent 14 townships, all the elected officials, boards, commissions. I'm also have a criminal caseload that is child abuse related. That is near and dear to my heart and really propelled me into wanting this position. This position is a unique judgeship. It's not like an ordinary common pleas or municipal court judgeship. It's something you have to be relatable to individuals, show compassion. 2 big avenues that I am going to focus on is the mental health of our youth, but also I'm going to be more involved in schools. I've already built those relationships as an assistant prosecutor. And in terms of probate court, I will run an efficient docket and also make sure that all litigants are treated the same. Lastly, I'm someone that you can believe in and someone that truly wants this position, and I think that will show you throughout this forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. We're now going to move to the question and answer portion of the forum. Candidates will have 1 minute and 30 seconds to answer each question. And we're going to begin with Caitlin Thorne, the editor of the Athens Messenger. Caitlin?
Hello. Hi. Thank you for having the media here to ask a question. My question for both the candidates is, with everything that has changed due to the pandemic, how are you best suited to fulfill the duties of this position throughout the course of the pandemic, in terms of children in schools that might not be seen as often? And then you mentioned mental health. How do you look to continue the duties of the office during the pandemic?
Thank you, Caitlin. And Zach will be first to answer.
Thank you, Caitlin. So I'm, like I said in the opening, I'm the civil attorney for the office, and that is essentially 4 out of the 5 school districts in Athens County. The great thing about this is that during the pandemic, I was able to build even a better relationship with those school superintendents, dealing with absenteeism, truancy, care, social services, and ultimately I was also working with the health department to ensure that this is going to be a safe avenue if we did return to school during that time. I'm also the attorney for Children's Services, understanding that there's the numbers are down for child abuse cases around the state and around the nation. However, that's not the case. There are several articles that demonstrate there's actually more child abuse or just the same, and it's actually more severe. Those are children that are being at home and not having those services and those outlets at school. But as a parent of a public school child, I can tell you that the teachers are doing the best that they can, that they are communicating and that they are reaching out and trying to advocate and speak to those kids that unfortunately may not have the outlet that they had before. And, I'm really proud to be a resident of the Athens City School District. I feel that they're doing a fantastic job. And, it's going to be a struggle, but we've done so well as citizens of adapting through this. I'm going to continue to adapt and find the best product out there to make sure Athens County citizens can succeed.
Thank you, Zach. Ken?
Thank you. I think primarily what I have to offer is my understanding of how most all of these service providers that meet the needs for children, the elderly, and mentally ill work when they're functioning at their best, prior to our pandemic, knowing how those connections and how systematically within those organizations, they try best to provide those services. So by, my years in teaching, I fully understand how school systems work, how they function with children, how they are able to be a safety net. And so many times we were raising kids just as vicarious parents because it seemed as though no one else was doing it. And I know I was just one of thousands of teachers in Athens County that did it. And so many people are out there doing it every day. I know it hurts them to not be there. I was talking to a teacher who teaches in the Athens City School District just the other day. It kills her to know that she can't interact. Whatever I can do to bring the court to bear, to help participate in that process, whether it's with children, whether it's with the folks in the mental health system, whether they're receiving services through integrated services, Hopewell, Appalachian Behavioral Health, or other care providers, whether it's the elderly that are receiving services from SetchCar and other home health systems, those are all down. We need to protect all of these individuals.
Thank you, Ken. And thank you again, Caitlin, for joining us tonight. Now we're going to move to the questions submitted by the public. And Ken, you will be the first to answer.
Okay.
What experience, professional or personal, best prepares you for this position?
28 years. 28 years. I don't know where to start. 12 years at Trimble Schools, 11,000 hours of classroom experience. You did everything you could do. We had a school system that had virtually nothing. When I started teaching, I was told I was going to teach 7th graders general music every day for the full year. I was given a storage room, folding chairs, a piano, and a chalkboard. That was what they could give me in 1992. Things have improved definitely since then, and I'm grateful for it. My mother had mental health issues. She died at 58 after complications of medications. My brother had schizophrenia. He took his own life when he was 40 years old. I have done 600 cases in the mental health docket. I can't tell you the number of hours pouring through medical charts at Appalachian Behavioral Health to understand what's going on, questioning and talking with doctors, therapists, all the providers there. When it comes to the elderly, I've been the guardian for 17 individuals. I've worked in nursing homes with my clients, so talking with those administrators, nurses, therapists. I've worked through the process for Medicaid long-term care facility, Medicaid waiver for assisted living, Medicaid waiver for passport. The list goes on.
Zach, same question. What experience, professional or personal, best prepares you for this position?
Thank you. I got my start in law school actually with the judicial branch. I externed for a federal court judge in the Southern District of Ohio. throughout that time, I was writing the opinions, I was writing the orders, and it's something that just always interested me. I'm one that's in the courtroom every day. And with my experience, which I was a young attorney representing indigent clients in Licking and Fairfield County, and I was heavily involved in the juvenile court aspect of those two counties where I was representing families, I was representing children, I was a guardian ad litem, something that Athens County has one of the best CASA programs around. But ultimately, my focus has been child abuse cases. And that is one of the most disturbing aspects of juvenile and probate court and it accounts for a majority of the court's docket, is that I have tremendous amount of experience in reviewing those cases and speaking to, again, the medical care providers, social workers, working with children's services, working with CASA. And when it comes down to it, we really need someone there that has that ability to bring out the most in individuals. I've seen individuals at their lowest point as being a prosecutor, as also being a criminal defense attorney. And I really think we need to provide them avenues and structures to succeed in Athens County.
The next question, and Zach, you will start, give the first answer. In which part of this position do you have more experience? The probate court side or the juvenile court side? And how will you ramp up to the duties of the other side where you are less experienced?
Well, it is juvenile court, and someone that practices and that has practice in Athens County Juvenile Probate Court, 75% of the court's docket is the juvenile court work. It's not probate court is not a tremendous amount of the court's docket and the court's time. I have a substantial amount of experience not only in private practice dealing with custody, but also abuse, neglect, dependency, and delinquency cases, which are criminal cases involving juveniles. I would like to say that at one time I was the prosecutor in juvenile court. In the aspect of probate court, I have experience in probate court. I've handled several estate planning issues. I have helped complex guardianships out. In fact, I've had complex litigation that was in probate court that went all the way up to the United States District Court. It was a very odd case. But ultimately, my job is to become more educated, and it doesn't matter if it's juvenile or probate court. I will tell you that as soon as this election's over, and I have been actually prior to this, I've hit the ground running. And what I've been doing is I've been studying, and I'm going to be the best person out there. And I can tell you, as when I walked in the primary, those 150 miles and met those 2,000 people, my work ethic won't be beat, and my determination won't be beat, and I'll bring that to the bench. Thank you.
Same question, Ken. Would you like me to repeat it?
No, I think I've got it. Thank you, Tanya. It's hard to say in my case because I've done both probate and juvenile almost ubiquitously since I began my practice. In juvenile court, I've practiced extensively on all three dockets, whether it's the private custody case where I've represented dozens, if not hundreds, of parents, grandparents, even just friends were the only friend for this child. I've represented them in protecting the best interests of the child in custody. Again, I've represented more than 100 children in abuse, neglect, dependency cases, and in delinquency cases. So all three dockets in the juvenile court, I have extensive experience on all three of those. When it comes to the probate side, again, I've have experience on virtually every docket except for marriages. I have to say I've never done a marriage. Nobody ever wants an attorney when they're getting married there. For some reason, I don't understand. But the mental health docket, the guardianship docket, special needs trust docket, the estate administration docket, even name changes and adoptions docket. I have just hundreds of thousands of hours when you combine all that together that I've done. I will continue to just pursue and build on every level of experience that I've been able to bring to this position today, and that will not stop.
Thank you, Ken. The next question, and Ken, you will be the first to answer. As juvenile court judge, you are required to make decisions that impact children and their families' lives forever. As judge, you have to decide what is in the best interest of a child. What prepares you to make these difficult decisions?
I would say all the time that I worked with parents and children, primarily in my years teaching school, you really have to know and understand a child. You have to know where they come from. You've got to know their abilities. You know, you can bring the best out of somebody if you can see in them what their best is. In addition to that, all the children that I've represented where we've had discussion and just hours and hours of courtroom time devoted to each and every one of those cases, where we've talked with the guardian ad litems, the therapists, the healthcare providers, understanding where they are. When I represent a child, I'm out there in their home. I'm meeting with the foster parents. I'm meeting the child where they are. Again, provided obviously I represent some infants in some pretty tragic cases. But I've had just a tremendous amount of experience in that arena. I think all of that prepares me well to have the intuitive knowledge that I've been able to build upon and collectively over these years. And really the example of Bob Stewart. I saw him, I was in his presence more than any legal mind in Athens County. He, like I said in my opening, his influence on me just is immeasurable.
Thank you. Zach, same question.
Thank you. So, like I said, when I was in private practice, when I was representing, criminal indigent individuals, I was representing those families, being parents in abuse, neglect, dependency situations, trying to get their kids back. The whole point is reunification. But I was also representing children in cases, which sometimes children can provide you their thoughts and their processes there. But what I'm most proud of is the guardian ad litem, where I took that training to be a guardian ad litem, and where I was focusing on what is truly in the best interest of the child. That is the eyes and ears of the court. And we have a CASA program that I'm going to completely rely upon being the eyes and ears of the court and providing the factual record that I need to make a determination. And why I'm geared to make these difficult decisions is when I, myself, and Elizabeth Pepper, who handle all the child abuse cases in Athens County, I've seen those tragic cases dealing with deaths of infants to individuals that are paralyzed for the rest of their life. However, there is that glimmer of hope. And, if I can help determine what's in the best interest of that child, whether it be going back to reunifying with their parents or whether finding their forever home, I am more than prepared and qualified to do so.
Thank you. The next question, and Zach, you'll be the first to answer. What are the biggest changes you think we need to make to our let me start over. What are the biggest changes you think we need to make to our justice system where children are concerned?
That's a great question. And one of my big topics in this campaign is when we're dealing with the juvenile justice system, we're focusing on rehabilitating the offender. This is not an adult court where we are looking to punish someone. What we're looking to is finding some avenue to make sure that that offender does not rehabilitate, and I don't want to see him back in my courtroom if elected. So what do? We need to provide them avenues for success. We need to provide them some structure in their life. And ways that I can go about that is, and when I saw as a defense attorney representing these juveniles and also a prosecutor, which I'm the only candidate that can say I've been on both sides, is the big focus is the mental health treatment of our youth. And it's truly an epidemic that I've seen that we need to fight that head on, or these kids are going to become adult offenders. I'm going to have either employed a mental health counselor, a mental health probation officer, a mental health liaison in the courtroom where we are going to hit this epidemic head on, and I'm going to make sure those kids get the mental health treatment that they deserve. but also they need to be held accountable sometimes. But that doesn't mean punishment. Ways that I'm going to help them learn from their mistakes is if the victim is up to it, there's a victim mediation program that I would like to institute where they can meet with the victim and see the harm that they have caused to that victim. And also community service. Community service is going to be a big part of my court. And the reason that I want to do that is the community service will occur in the township, city, or village where it occurred, so they can actually see the damage that they had done. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Same question.
Thank you. First, I would just want to start out and say when we talk about changes to the juvenile court system, I would want to be clear that it would be my intent to build on the system that Bob Stewart has provided. I think he did an exemplary job of handling youth and how he dealt with children in our community, whether they were abused child or a delinquent child. But I recognize I don't think that's necessarily the spirit of this question. I think when you look with respect to the side of juvenile delinquency, it's important, again, you need to know and meet a child where they are. They're all different. And none of them come with a set of instructions. You know, any classroom teacher knows this. When you've got a class of 20, 30 different personalities and you've got to get them to do the best that they can, and you realize they all learn in different ways, they all have different intelligences that they can draw upon, they all have different skill sets and comfort zones. You need to know how to reach them. Like I said, I practiced in 18 counties across the state of Ohio. One of the programs that I'd like to emulate is what I've seen up in Fairfield County. It's a broad spectrum of juvenile program that meets kids, identifies them in different categories, what are going to be their strengths and how research and statistically, we know best to reach those certain kids in those ways. That's what I would like to implement.
Thanks. The next question that was submitted reads, in your courtroom, will you allow hearsay if it's spoken by an authority figure? And Ken, you're the first to answer.
Well, this will be a quick and easy answer. I think I will follow the rules of evidence with regard to hearsay. It's a moving target in many ways. It's a topic that gets a lot of attention, particularly among legal minds. You read articles in our Ohio State Bar Association magazine and the American Bar Association magazine, and you can read articles on law review publications through different law schools. So that is a topic that is hotly debated, how hearsay works. I've got 13 years of legal practice experience. I think I know pretty well how the hearsay exceptions and exclusions and how the rules work. They're not easy. And I think, at this point for me as a judge, my job is to follow the law and follow the rules. If bigger and smarter legal minds than mine can figure out a way to improve the system by creating other hearsay exceptions and different rules, by all means, I would follow those rules. But that's my job as a judge.
Zach, same question.
Thank you. And I won't be verbose with this. Obviously, I will follow the law, and someone that has dealt with hearsay over and over again with jury trials, with bench trials, with evidentiary hearings as a prosecutor, as a criminal defense attorney, and as a private practitioner. I have a significant amount of time researching hearsay and hearsay exceptions, which is very unfortunate because I see myself, Ken, and Tanya on here. We just smile when we have to do research on hearsay. But I've done way too much of it. If it comes up, I will follow the law, but also if it's something that needs to be researched, it'll be researched. And ultimately, I'm going to continue to follow the law regarding hearsay. And really, that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you both. Next question. Zach, you'll be the first to answer. Will you make your decisions based on proven facts rather than just written documents signed by an Athens County Children's Services worker? And will you make your own inquiries if something presented to you doesn't make sense?
So, no, I won't just rely on an affidavit from Children's Services. Absolutely not. I want to take all evidence into consideration. Obviously, an affidavit means something, but if there is testimony contrary to that or evidentiary being documents that go opposite of that affidavit, I'm going to take that into consideration. It's very important not to just rely on an affidavit because as a prosecutor and when I was in private practice, trust me, I saw plenty of affidavits that I don't think pass the muster. And as a judge, I think it's very important that you do make those inquiries. You are going to be making very important decisions, whether it's a juvenile delinquency matter, that they're accused of a crime because, it could be a sex offense. And I want to make all those inquiries to make sure that I'm making the right determination. If it's in an abuse, neglect, dependency case, this is one of the most important things to an individual being a parent or even a child. And I want to make sure that I'm making the right decision to decide whether that child is going to go back home with their parents or whether they need to find a different home. I think it's very important to take into consideration of everything that's before the court. I obviously am not going to take into consideration to thing that's outside the court record, but if it's documentary evidence, if it's testimony, if it's affidavits, and my own personal questions, that's what I'm going to take into account when I make my decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ken, same question.
Thank you. I think it's essential for any judge to weigh the evidence and weigh the facts before him or her appropriately. There's so much that goes into how those facts are weighed in individual cases. Obviously, the standard of review is going to be essential when it comes to children's services cases. There are a lot of different stages that happen. Like I said, in the cases that I've been involved with, you see them progress through, and there's some cases where, I represented a fellow. I was just in court just yesterday, and my fellow's now 20 years old, and we still have a case on him. So we still move these things along, and each stage is going to have its own burden of proof. I think it is essential to get to the bottom of that. Judge Stewart was always excellent in that regard and how he would handle those. And it was very clear to me to see how that influenced and helped get to what is in the best interest of the child. That is what it's about. It's juvenile court. It's not Athens County Children's Services Court. It's not foster parent court. It's not parent court. It's juvenile court. I am not in any way disregarding those. Those agencies are essential in child welfare and protection. But I think it's really important that the judge be as impartial as they possibly can be, and that the inquiry is done responsibly and does not go outside the bounds of the law.
Ken, the next question, you'll be the first to answer. And this is the question. Do you believe that the parent or foster parent with more money and a bigger house should get custody of a child? Why or why not?
I think that would have almost no bearing in any case that I've ever seen. The ability to provide for a child is essential. But I can tell you, so I have 5 brothers. There were 6 of us boys. My mom had mental health issues. My dad provided for all 8 in his family just on what he earned. We didn't have much. We didn't have much at all. And there may have been times if somebody came into our household and would have said, my word, what's going on here? Should we intervene in this situation? My brother Dan is a senior research scientist in California. My brother Keith owns his own construction business. My brother Chuck is the CEO of a pharmaceutical company in Princeton, New Jersey. My brother Ron is an orchestra director for a public school in Laramie, Wyoming. Even with my mom's mental illness, they raised some pretty good guys, I think, if I can say so myself. And I'm just the little country lawyer in the bunch who'd like to be a little country judge someday to help kids that grew up in that same kind of family. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Zach, same question.
Absolutely not, is the short answer. I can't keep going back this enough, is that I got my start out representing parents that didn't have money. And I saw some of those parents at their absolute worst. But I also saw those parents grow, which the whole point of abuse, neglect, dependency cases is to reunify that parent with the child. I saw so many parents with their backs up against the wall with no money, trying whatever they could to get their child back. If that meant, especially in Fairfield County, when it was random drug testing and you had to call a cell phone number and say, and hear if you had to test that day. A lot of them didn't have transportation, but I had quite a few that would walk miles to go get that test done. They would do whatever possible. And when I was in custody cases, I represented individuals that at times did have money and at times didn't have money. But I will tell you that it doesn't matter to me whether someone has $1 million or whether they have negative $1 million in the bank. And I think anybody that knows me, I'm going to treat every person the exact same. And I think that's very important as a judicial candidate and hopefully the next judge, is that when you come in my courtroom, you can feel respected by me, much as the way as what Judge Stewart did with all the litigants in his courtroom.
Thank you. Zach, this next question will be answered by you first. How does a parent's mental illness or mental disability factor into your judgment in child custody cases? Should a child in a custody case be awarded to a parent with a diagnosed mental illness or mental disability?
At some point that's a difficult situation. I think you're going to have to look at obviously what's in the best interest of the child, as that is absolutely the standard that we need to go by. But what we really need to focus on is whether, there are several mental illnesses or diagnoses out there that individuals, if properly treated with medication, are perfectly normal adults that can strive in society. And for me, if someone is diagnosed with a mental illness or diagnosis, and for me to rip them away from their child, I'm not only hurting a parent, I'm potentially hurting a child's life. I think the most important factor to look into is whether it's in the best interest of the child, but also looking of whether that parent can continue with that mental illness or diagnosis. But to me, that's not going to be a deciding factor of whether a child is going to be reunified with a parent or not. I feel very strongly about that. So I know that was kind of a short answer, but that's very near and dear to my heart.
Thank you. Ken, do you need me to repeat the question?
No, I think I've got it. Thank you. So I will tiptoe around this a little bit because, again, I don't want to violate any of the rules of judicial conduct and comment on any case, because it would be apparent that we do have parents that are currently suffering from mental health issues and are currently in the probate court. So it's not my intent to comment on any of those. But I think my last answer makes it pretty clear that a person with mental health issues, can be a good and responsible parent. That said, though, I recognize very clearly in my own case, without my dad, I don't know. I don't know if all 6 of us would have been able to stay in mom's care. It was tough. Dad kept us together. Dad kept mom together. And so I can see if you're in a situation where you are in juvenile court and you're in a custody case, by and large, sadly, we're talking about parents who, in most cases, don't have that support from one another. Very often, they're at odds. Very often, one of the parents is incarcerated. So we're looking at one parent. And if you've got one parent with mental health issues, I mean, it has to be a consideration. It has to. I will do everything I can to preserve families. I will do everything I can from the bench to try to strengthen families. Kids do best in families, but we need to protect them where they need it.
Ken, you will be the first to answer this next question that was submitted, and it's in the first person, so I'm going to read it that way.
Okay.
I am an active PTO member in Athens City Schools and a current student in the Principal Preparation Program at Ohio University. I am closely following this election and the ways a well-appointed judge could combat the school-to-prison pipeline that we see in poverty-ridden areas such as our own in Athens County. My question is, what do you believe are the root causes of juvenile crimes? And what are some ways the court could reduce the number of juvenile crimes?
I think the root cause really comes down to vision. Any child who is not fulfilling his or her potential. Now, again, I think maybe there is an assumption here that we're talking about an ordinary healthy child. Obviously, if there's mental health issues or some cognitive impairment, sometimes that can be a basis for a struggle, and we need to treat that. We need to recognize and treat that. But otherwise, where you have children that are just otherwise ordinary, healthy child, it's lack of vision. They can't see their own potential. I saw it as a teacher. When I had a band, we took the smallest band in the state of Ohio in 2003. So in 2003, we qualified for state marching band finals with mostly 7th and 8th graders out of my 19 kids. It took effort to really get them to see who they were, that they could do more than what they believed they could. Sometimes I had to convince the parents that their child had more in them that they recognized. When they know what they can do, then they can succeed. One of the programs that I was talking about earlier, it's a broader spectrum of trying to identify children, trying to get them assessed early, not necessarily by having additional employees or spending more money in the courthouse, but by using what we have so that we can help children to see their future and see their potential.
Thank you, Ken. I have a note that we may be having some audio issues. I'm going to pause just for a minute and check with our government channel. We've got reports from various people watching that the sound was out and then it's coming in and out. So I have a note from Ryan, who's been amazing helping us set up this forum, that he thinks that the sound is back and is good to go. So I'm going to continue until I hear differently. Zach, given that whole pause, do you want me to repeat the question?
No, thank you. I remember it.
Okay.
So this question makes me so excited to talk about, because this is a true passion of mine. In Athens County, we live in a very impoverished area, and throughout my time in Athens County, especially on the prosecutor side, I've seen the lack of hope, the lack of structure, the lack of avenues to succeed for not only adults, but also when I was in juvenile court as the prosecutor. And, we need to make it a point to rehabilitate the offender, not simply having them before the case in court and saying, okay, you're going to be put on probation and we'll monitor you somewhat, and you have to pay some fines and court costs. How are we doing our job? How am I doing my job if I were elected? I think it's very important that we look at what those avenues are and what we can do to strive for these individuals, these juveniles, to succeed. I don't want these individuals to become adult offenders. I've seen it too much. Mental health, obviously, I've talked upon, so I won't hit it too hard in this area, is a huge issue that I want to stress upon. But ways to reduce is we provide that substance abuse treatment, which I know we already do, closely monitor these individuals, provide them ways to be positive in the community. Ways to do that is obviously community service in areas where the crime has been committed, meeting the victim of the crime that was committed, further ways to keep them active after school. I would love to be active with other organizations to create after-school programs for our youth.
Thank you. This next question is about court management, and Zach, you'll be the first to answer. How will you manage your court in order to decrease the trauma families experience in legal proceedings?
Thank you. So the good part about this is that we have two magistrates right now that have done a fantastic job. John Perrin, who handles a lot of the misdemeanor delinquencies, and then you have Lena Featheroth, who does the custody work. Particularly to reduce the trauma, I'd like to focus on this question because I know we've talked a lot about abuse, neglect, dependency cases, which I'm going to be hearing. Obviously, it's not going to be a magistrate. Everything's going to go through me. But for these custody cases, a thing that I really want to focus on is that I want the litigants to see me before in that first hearing, that it's not a magistrate, that it's me as the judge. And the reason that I want to have that discussion with them is that I want to show that this issue of disagreement between them on visitation or custody doesn't need to be affecting the child. And if it does affect the child, there will be consequences. I've seen it time and time again where parents use children as pawns in a custody case, and it breaks my heart. In fact, I had there were times that I had to get off a case because it has such an impact on the child that it was negatively affecting me. Obviously, I don't want cases to be prolonged more than they have to, because this whole court, juvenile probate court, is a sensitive subject. So ultimately, I want to have a docket that is run smoothly and expeditiously. Thank you.
Thank you. Ken, same question.
Thank you. I think primarily when we're talking about this issue of the trauma that, happens with families when they're going through juvenile court, I think it's most evident in our abuse, neglect, and dependency cases. Fortunately, in those cases, children are rarely, they're rarely ever in court. You frankly just don't ever see them there unless, like as for myself as the attorney for the child, I might ask, or the CASA guardian ad litem might ask for an in-camera interview for a child that's particularly mature, or what have you. Nearly every child that I have ever represented receives some sort of counseling and therapy and treatment, unless it's really clear that they are handling the situation very well, or they're so young that they just can't appreciate what's happening. So primarily they get that opportunity. If you're a parent that's failing to do your job, trauma may not be the right word for it, but I don't have any problem making you uncomfortable. I'm going to hold you accountable to be a good parent, and your child deserves it. And I don't care the circumstances of how that child came to be. That child's got you. You're the parent. I'm sorry if you're uncomfortable, but we're going to do this because, again, it's juvenile court. It's not parent court. Thank you.
All right. This next question is a little bit long. Ken, you will be going first, and I'll begin reading. The writer says, this fall, many Athens County school districts are fully online with daily attendance requirements for asynchronous Zoom meetings. For working parents, particularly those doing low-paying shift work, facilitating these online meetings and schoolwork during the day is impossible, and work must be done in the evenings. What novel issues could you foresee facing around the issue of truancy during this time of online learning? And what factors should the court take into consideration in making its truancy decisions?
Well, I see this as a kind of a question in primarily two parts, one of which is that I can comment on, and the other is about what the court can do. Yeah, there are issues. I was talking to a friend of mine who was also a teacher at Trimble, and he was in my office here last week, and he was telling me all of the the neat creative ways that children are misbehaving online. Because they're so brilliant, they can sort of hack the system and they can do all kinds of crazy things while he's trying to teach his classroom. You know, that's tough. I appreciate and believe me, I take very seriously the pandemic we're in. But boy, we have got to find a way to get kids in school. Now, I'm not saying we risk their safety. I'm not saying we risk the safety of the teachers or the support staff. I don't think we should be risking their safety. But and I don't envy our superintendents or our principals at all, or the teachers for that matter, for what they're doing. This is tough. And yeah, it leads to a lot of difficulties in the classroom and instruction, and the kids are just paying for it with their own lack of education. As far as what the court can do, you know, truancy cases are those cases that are brought before me. The court is, you know, it's just simply not in a position to go chasing after truancy cases. So, you know, I would take each one as it comes.
Okay. Zach, same question.
So I'm a parent of a public school child that is doing online learning. You know, it is absolutely a struggle. You know, we have kids, especially younger kids, that may not be computer literate, but we also have, you know, some older kids that can find ways to sneak the system. I can tell you that it is difficult on everyone, and I cannot stress how proud I am of the public school teachers and the way that they've adapted and the way that the superintendents have adapted to the situation. We are facing something that is absolutely impossible, that no one ever could have prepared for. But they're rolling with the punches, and I can't say how proud I am of them. But I also have been meeting with the school superintendents, especially during COVID, on this exact issue. It's a very difficult issue in terms of absenteeism or truancy when you do have those individuals that work during the day and they don't have that childcare aspect. You know, that's something ultimately could be a factor when making a determination whether you know, there is a violation of the law and you know, if there needs to be rehabilitation. But again, that's on a case-by-case basis. But that's obviously something that, as judge, I would have to consider because of what's going on in the world.
Thanks, Zach. This next question is also a bit lengthy, and Zach, you'll be the first to answer. The questioner writes, in truancy cases in Athens County, students who are brought in front of the juvenile judge on quote unquote unruly charges are not given the opportunity to have a public defender or other appointed counsel until the point that they fail a diversion program. The result of this practice means that students and their families are often not able to challenge the initial charges, even when the school district may not have completed their statutory requirements prior to filing. Students often feel forced into signing diversion agreements for charges they believe are unfounded without an attorney present to advise them of their rights. Would you continue this practice as juvenile judge? If not, what changes would you make?
So thank you. As someone that's represented hundreds, if not thousands, of individuals and in criminal defense, especially indigent, you know, I understand that concern of whether someone has the right to counsel or whether if diversion is an appropriate avenue. If someone doesn't want to go into a diversion aspect of an unruly or any other charge that may be something that would be eligible for diversion, they have the right to their day in court. And that being said, if they have facts that they want to present, I have no problem with that. Ultimately, I want every litigant, whether it's a criminal case, whether it's abuse, neglect, dependency, whether it's a probate matter, it doesn't matter to me. I want any individual to feel like they've gotten a fair shot in my courtroom. I don't want individuals to feel like they have to do diversion if they don't want to. But ultimately, I want them to feel that they've had their fair shot. I'm firm and I'm fair to each and every litigant. Thanks.
Ken.
Oh, excuse me. Thank you. I think, certainly, as the judge, we have to be mindful of what Ohio law dictates, and Ohio law does dictate which defendants are entitled to an attorney and which ones, what cases do not fulfill that requirement or meet that standard. And then the other thing that, certainly is a practical consideration, we have to consider what the cost of those issues would be in light of the benefit of that. Athens County is not equipped with unlimited resources to do this. So those are real concerns. But I do think there are ways that we can address some of these matters. We can help reduce these issues from coming before the court and becoming issues even from the start, is by having, and one of the things, like I said, I would like to implement is a broader spectrum of cases and interventions that the court can provide and work with the schools, and to be involved while not, while still maintaining the independence of the judiciary, but to have ways that we can help children when identifying them when they're having issues, so that we can try to avoid these issues from the start. Some cases are going to be difficult and unavoidable. Anybody that works with kids would know that, but I think we could make improvements there.
Thank you. Ken, this next question, we will begin with you. In juvenile custody cases, parties are often greatly assisted by a guardian ad litem, which is a third party who is appointed by a juvenile court in determining what is in the minor child's best interest. As juvenile court judge, if you believe a guardian ad litem would be useful in a situation, but the parties cannot afford the court costs associated with having one, how would you proceed?
Well, I think this really becomes a budget question, doesn't it? I mean, what can the court afford and provide in that situation? I agree with the notion that guardian ad litems, whether it's in a private custody case or whether it's an adult abuse, neglect, or dependency case, those are essential tools and essential components. Not so, I guess I would disagree with the characterization that they assist the parties. I think they assist the court in being eyes and ears on the ground and provide kind of a fair and balanced opinion and means to assess situation that is certainly more intimate than the court is equipped to bring to bear in the confines of the courtroom. So those are essential. Where we can have guardian ad litems and where we can provide those, I will say, I guess the best thing I can say is that I sympathize with the difficulty, because we struggle to find enough guardian ad litems, particularly in the private custody docket, and even the ones that we do have are oftentimes overworked, and there's cost involved. I would be happy to find any way that we can improve the number, increase the number of guardian ad litems that are available to us. I would work with any agency, any organization at the local or state level to increase those numbers and make them more available, because they are invaluable.
Zach, same question.
Thank you. So, Athens County, obviously, we're not a large county like Franklin County, Hamilton County, Cuyahoga County. Yeah, you have to think outside the box. And sometimes, there's ways that we can do that. One is there's a mediation fund through the court system that, in lieu of a guardian ad litem, especially if the parties don't want to agree on the expense of a guardian ad litem, a cheaper option, especially if the court is willing to pay, and again, this comes to a budget issue, willing to pay for mediation session, you very likely could have a mediator try to resolve the outstanding issues between the parties. And the best part about that in Athens County, it is usually an attorney and usually someone that is well-versed in this area. So essentially, you're kind of getting a guardian ad litem. But the other avenue is, I've said this time and time again when I've been out campaigning, when I have been talking to community leaders, I'm going to be active in grant funding. And securing those grants, I almost guarantee that there's going to be one out there for guardian ad litem funds. And I'm going to work my tail off to secure funding for that very reason, because even though this is a private custody case, that doesn't necessarily mean that these individuals have a lot of funds to hire attorneys, to pay for guardian ad litem. And if the court can assist that in any way, I would be more than glad to, especially if it is to resolve an issue amicably with a guardian ad litem.
Thank you. Next question, and Zach, we'll begin with you. And it also has a introduction to it. We seem to have very informed people submitting questions.
That's good.
Yeah, these are excellent. Judge Robe began a program to reduce juvenile repeat traffic offenders when he was in office. Originally, it was called CARTEENS, CARTEENS, but has changed somewhat in format over the years. Judge Stewart modified it somewhat and continued the practice of having first-time juvenile traffic offenders attend a class given at the highway patrol post, along with one of their parents, and supported by a certified driving instructor and at least one of the troopers. The program has reduced the number of repeat offenders by getting both the teens and their parents involved in teen driving safety. As teens have been involved in some 30 driving fatalities in Athens County since 1995, will you commit to continuing the program or a similar program in the future? And do you see improvements in that regard?
That's a really good question. And as someone that deals with traffic-related crashes, especially I've been involved in traffic homicide cases, yes, I absolutely will be continuing this program. To me, one of the coolest things as a 16-year-old was to get my license to drive around. And shortly after that, I immediately recognized how precious driving was and how precious another life was when I had a friend sitting next to me. We can't take life for granted. And I know that there has been a higher fatality rate in Athens County dealing with juvenile traffic offenders. And, by getting rid of a program, I think would almost bump that up. I think it's important to educate our youth about those offenses and the potential ramifications if one of those juvenile offenders were to get in a traffic crash and potentially harm themselves, but harm a parent, a child, a friend. I think that's very important. And obviously, to build upon that program, I will, I've worked with the Ohio State Highway Patrol for a number of years. A lot of them are friends of mine. I will look to see what trends are going on in the nation, and if there's ways to build upon that program, and there always is going to be. I'll tell you that I'm going to get to the bottom of it and find a better program.
Thank you, Zach. Ken, same question.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this is a pretty short answer. Yeah, it's clearly a good program. I mean, understanding children where they are, the issues that they're dealing with when you've got teen drivers, you're not necessarily dealing with a hardened criminal that's having traffic issues. There could be all kinds of things that are going on there. And some of these other interventions are key to reducing further injury, further accidents, and also further criminal activity. It's a clear part of the spectrum program that I was talking about earlier of different interventions. This is clear, would fit very squarely in that program of interventions. So I would certainly be happy to do that. The improvements, I guess we'd follow the data and follow the research. If we've got good data and good research, it's showing that we can improve it in certain ways. There are 87 other counties in the state of Ohio that have juvenile courts, and Athens County is not alone in dealing with traffic issues involving teen drivers. So, certainly reaching out to colleagues in other counties and how they address it and what are some of the best practices and adopt those. So I think that would fit very squarely within my role as a juvenile judge.
Thank you, Ken. Next question. And Ken, you will be the first to answer. How do you feel about prosecuting police officers for excessive force? And what type of measures will be taken against those officers who are found guilty of this offense?
Well, I can appreciate the question. It's clearly an important question. I'm not really trying to dodge, but that's not really an issue that's going to present itself in probate or juvenile court. That's really a general division question. I think I've said before, and I've made it very clear, this is where my talents lie. These are where my gifts are, probate and juvenile court. It's the experience that I've had and the work that I've done over the last 28 years in Athens County. So in that regard, again, I would pursue that. But as far as how officers are being prosecuted, that's a job for the third floor in Athens County. And I appreciate the pain, the angst, and the concern that's behind this question. But in this particular race and for the job at hand, it's we've got other tragedies that we're dealing with. And not to make light of the kind of tragedy that's being suggested in this question, but those tragedies that we see in probate and juvenile court, those are the ones that I'm truly equipped to deal with. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Zach.
So as someone that practices as a prosecutor and has obviously a tremendous amount of experience in juvenile probate court, that's something that as judge, I would not hear. I can give some experience as a prosecutor is that as an Athens County prosecutor, we handle, we are a law enforcement office, but I can tell you that we are a very progressive office. And there have been times that I've been a prosecutor against a police officer that's been accused of a crime. And it doesn't matter who is accused of the crime. I'm representing the state of Ohio when a grand jury found probable cause that they committed a crime. But, with that being said, I work with some of the best investigators in Athens County, that treat everybody the exact same. I will tell you, it doesn't matter if that individual is a police officer or if that individual is a drug dealer. In our office, a crime is a crime. But ultimately, in the juvenile probate court, we won't hear cases involving police officers and the potential of excess force. The only time that may come up is, if there is a juvenile delinquency case and the juvenile brings that to light. But there won't be prosecution of excessive force in juvenile probate court.
Thank you, Zach. Zach, you're up again. And the question is, how will you handle conflicts of interest on the bench?
Well, this is actually a really easy one. Back in the day, it used to be very difficult for a judge to get off a case if there was a conflict of interest. But the Supreme Court in recent years has made it very easy. So if you have a conflict or a potential conflict, all you have to do is tell the Supreme Court and they'll appoint a judge for that specific case. And, the reason that I'm bringing that up to light is that I had a discussion with Tom Gerken, who was a former Hocking County Court of Common Pleas judge who has passed away from cancer. After his judgeship, he became a public defender in Athens County, and Tom and I became very, very good friends to the point that we would be emailing throughout the day and night food recipes. We were big foodies. he became really close to me to a point that I relied upon him. And prior to his passing, he said, "Zach, I'm supporting you 100%, whatever you need. But the number one rule that I always learned is that if you have a conflict, tell the Supreme Court and they will appoint a judge." And that's something that I'm going to hold near and dear to my heart, because I don't want to lose credibility with the citizens of Athens County on a case that easily can be handled by someone else. Thanks.
Ken, same question.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think when a conflict of interest is identified, it's very clear you do make use of the resources that are provided under the Ohio Supreme Court for independent judiciaries to become involved. Certainly, in my own case, as a solo practice attorney and somebody who's been appointed in the large majority of my probate and juvenile court work, and have worked independently just for particular individuals. I don't represent any agencies. I don't have a history of that. So the risk of conflict of interest is relatively low. And while I'd say I came to Athens County in 1992, and my family here consists of my wife, my son, and my mother and father-in-law here in Athens County, and so I think my risk is relatively low. But certainly where they would appear, we'll certainly take every measure, because justice demands it. Every person that comes into court should know that they're going to have an unbiased judge who's not beholden to anyone else or any other group. So I would certainly work every day of my practice as a judge to uphold that standard. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. And this question is coming right back at you, Ken.
Okay.
What reforms do you support to increase access to justice for all kids? And will you fight for those reforms?
So, understanding what the judiciary consists of, I think the kinds of reforms for access to justice is, one, to make sure that the court is well informed where access has been denied or limited, or where there has been a breakdown in the availability for justice for anybody in our community, whoever they may be, whatever type of disadvantage they have in coming to court. So I think education in the courthouse, I think diversity in the courthouse is an essential part of having a judiciary that understands where its community comes from. I mean, I think when you look across the state of Ohio, it's hard to find a county in the state of Ohio that lines up with the amount of diversity, just socioeconomic, all kinds of areas of diversity that we see here in Athens County. Maybe not always diverse in every single way, but I think that's essential. The other part of that, again, is providing justice for kids. I think you got to identify, where are they struggling? Know who you're dealing with. Know the child that you're trying to serve. Now, as a court, again, we're somewhat limited. Our job is to act as the judiciary, not the policymaker. So we certainly do the best we can.
Thank you. Zach?
So I've been stressing this throughout the time here, is about, especially in juvenile court, is to provide that avenue to rehabilitation. I am going to be active in the courtroom in ensuring that not only are they understanding and being held accountable, but also providing and looking at what those true issues are and how we can overcome them so they're not back in my courtroom. And if that's being social services, substance abuse, I want to be active and get down to the real root of these issues and ultimately make them successful adults and Athens County residents. When it comes to access to justice, I sit on the Athens County Law Library Board, and I was instrumental and getting a portal upstairs for the public to do legal research for free on what's known as Westlaw. I also want to be extremely active in the Supreme Court forms and other generic forms that should be available to all litigants. I know that we have a law library upstairs that's well equipped. I just want to make sure that the juvenile court litigants, particularly in custody cases, private custody cases, know that this information is accessible and is something that they can use to further their case. It's a very important topic to me because it does provide access, legal access to each and every individual that comes before the court.
Thank you, Zach. According to my timekeeping, I think we have time for 2 more questions before we move into closing statements. Zach, you'll be the first to answer this question. The questioner writes, is there an age limit beyond which a child offender is automatically sent to adult court? Can this limit be overruled? For example, if a 16-year-old commits murder, is he or she remanded to adult court? What is your opinion on such actions?
So that's a very good case, and this is something that I have experience in. So when a offender that is under the age of 18 commits a crime, and usually all crimes are the same if committed by an adult as well as a juvenile, except for unruly or habitual truancy, they don't automatically have their case presented to a grand jury and therefore are indicted and are all automatically in adult court. What goes through is a bind over process, and it's a very very detailed process that Judge Stewart did phenomenally on. And I won't change much on that, is that you hear evidence, you have an investigations that's done, and it's on a case-by-case basis. That doesn't mean, that, I can't say that every person that allegedly commits murder or a heinous act is automatically going to be bound over. It is discretionary by the court. So that means I'm going to look at each and every case with a fine-tooth comb, because this is a life-changing event. It's not necessarily something that I'm opposed to, but it's something that it's like an abuse, neglect, dependency case. It's a life-changing decision, and that's something that I'm going to have the court investigate, hear evidence, and determine on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you. Ken, same question.
Thank you. The bind over process is one that is very detailed. Again, anytime you're dealing with an individual, and if you're going to be an independent judge and to be fair with the people that appear before you, I mean, you have to take each case on a case-by-case basis. There's no way to predetermine how you're going to handle any of these particular cases. So the bind over process is one that I think is very thorough, intricate, essential in how those offenders are determined to be ones that should be bound over. And there are so many factors that would be considered in those to really do justice to it. The only way you could do that would be to talk specifically about cases, which clearly we're prohibited from doing. But that it's an important issue. It would get my undivided attention, and we would follow the process that's provided under law for that, and do it in every way we can to, 1, avoid abuses, and 2, avoid additional harm. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. And our final question of the evening. Ken, you will be starting us off with your answer. The question is, what do you see as the most serious problems in the present juvenile justice system?
Well, I think in our present juvenile justice system, and again, not taking anything away from the way Judge Stewart handled our docket here in Athens County, but I think the thing that we need to do better is identify children where they are, identify the issues that they are suffering under, whatever those may be. And you really need to look carefully, and you've got to educate yourself on how children react, how they behave, how they're going to, thrive, what's going to motivate them. Again, they're all different. They're all different. And so we need to have a system in place that provides, a comprehensive kind of assessments so that we can steer children based on the best evidence and research that we have available as to how children react and how they operate while they're going through the judicial process system, and so that we provide a means for them to address the issue that they're dealing with, to protect them from any unfair bias or prejudice, and to be sure that we are helping them see the vision of who they can be. That is just so essential. It is so essential. If a child doesn't know what he or she can do or be, what chance do they have to achieve it? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ken. Zach, same question.
Thank you. So as someone that's been on both sides of the aisle here, essentially, I want to let you know that I've practiced before Judge Stewart, and Judge Stewart ran a fantastic court, and he was well regarded among his peers, but also the judicial community. But when it comes to it, I have several things that are near and dear to my heart. Those obviously are children. And when we're dealing with the juvenile justice system, my whole point is to rehabilitate. I can't say that enough. Rehabilitate the offender. And that means not create this juvenile to prison pipeline where they become adults. So we really need to focus on what the root of the cause is. And time again, something that I saw as a prosecutor and also as a criminal defense attorney was the lack of structure that were involved in these child's lives, but also the mental health. It's scary to see essentially this epidemic that it goes undiagnosed. And if we wait too long, we have failed as a society. As I stated in my opening, the juvenile probate court judgeship is different than your ordinary judgeship. It's hands-on, and that's what I'm going to be. I'm also going to have better communication with the schools. I've already started that communication. I've met with the superintendents on several occasions, and that's something I want to be very active in, is our educational system.
Wow. Thank you both for handling those questions so beautifully and staying on time. We are going to end the forum with closing statements. Our timekeeper is going to put 2 minutes on her clock. And those closing statements begin with Ken.
Thank you. I think that it is clear that this race turns on the question of experience. My mission of service to the community has given me a level of experience, understanding, and abilities that make me especially suited for the position of probate and juvenile judge. In my life, I've had the pleasure of working alongside so many members of our community who have followed their own path of service. For some, it's led them to be teachers, doctors, nurses, business owners, founders and directors of charitable organizations that help the poor, the abused, the underserved, the neglected. It has led them to be mayors, law enforcement, clergy, and in so many other vocations. No matter how bad the world looks today, if you just open your eyes and see the countless number of people in our own community that give themselves every day, there's reason for hope. My personal path of service has led me here. Now, standing before you in this virtual forum, I'm 51 years old, and since I was 18, I have tried my level best to serve others where I could. For 28 years, I've served Athens County. You can't give what you don't have, and there is no doubt in my mind that my experience, my education, insight, and understanding can have real value in the lives of children, the elderly, and mentally impaired if I'm only willing to give it. At an early age, I learned that my life is more than about just me. What we contribute, when we do so for the good of one another, even in small ways, we can transcend our own lives. I'm nothing if I'm not willing to offer my gifts and service to others, particularly the most vulnerable in our society. So I ask you, please help me continue to offer what I have been so fortunate to receive by voting for me for Athens County Probate and Juvenile Judge. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Zach, your closing statement, please.
Thank you. You guys have heard my passion for this. And I do want to point out that when we're talking about experience, neither one of us have been judged. So both of us will be walking into this courtroom fresh. And I want to let you know that I'm going to be that person, if elected, that's going to bring that firm, that fairness, and that compassion to the juvenile probate court that's absolutely needed. I've had experience in almost every part of law, especially involving this court. I've had every experience in that courtroom. I'm in a courtroom almost daily. I know the rules of evidence. I am a community leader. I am involved in youth sports. I sit on several boards. As I said in my opening statement, you're not going to get someone that is going to outwork me. You're not going to see someone that's more dedicated to this job than me. I have put everything on my back for this election, including taking my son around to various events, and he's my little campaign buddy, and it's something I'm always going to cherish. But, you know, I want to let you know that since the pandemic, I haven't been able to meet as many people as I did in the primary, but I've reached out to these organizations and shown that I am the right person for the job. And as I said in the opening, that I have several organizations that I have gathered the endorsements from that are community leaders. The Athens County Democratic Party is a big one. AFSCME is another big one. But one that is very, very, very dear to this court is the National Association of Social Workers. I think Ken and I both can tell you that there are social workers all throughout this court, and they have chosen me and endorsed me to be the next Athens County Juvenile Probate Court judge. I'm one that's open and I'm honest, and I can take any criticism, but I also want to let you know that I think I deserve to be the next Athens County Juvenile Probate Court judge, and I hope I can gather your vote. Thank you.
I want to close this forum by extending a thank you to both candidates for participating in our democratic process. This is one of the main ways we have to learn about our candidates, and we appreciate you both putting yourselves out there and answering questions in this format. I also want to extend an enormous thank you to the City of Athens government channel for partnering with us in these very unusual times. They provided the Zoom technology, the recording and distribution of the forum across multiple platforms, and the technological expertise to help make all of this happen. This recording will be viewable on the City of Athens YouTube channel and on their Facebook page. It will also be available on the League of Women Voters of Athens County's Facebook page, and it will be replayed on the government channel, which you can find at channel 1024. And finally, I want to thank the people of Athens County for submitting so many great questions. We were thrilled with how many we got, and I only wish we could have gotten to all of them. And I also want to thank you for tuning in to learn more about these candidates. We urge all of you to make a voting plan now, whether you decide you want to mail in your ballot, whether you decide you want to do early in person by getting yourself to the Board of Elections starting October 6th, or whether you feel most comfortable going to your polling place on November 3rd on Election Day. But please make a plan. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful evening.